after Nintendo Switch 2. Yes, that's what we're about to look at. And the reason why I say that is because I saw this morning, right? But I was not about to do a like instant reaction video in bed because I saw it as I was in bed in the morning. They like shadow dropped it at like 7 in the morning my time, 6 in the morning my time, something like that. So I was still in bed. I wasn't out of bed yet. I was awake. So I saw it and I was like, wow, this doesn't even have 2,000 views. Like by the time I saw it, it hadn't even had 2,000 views yet. But I kind of wanted to look at it on stream and like talk about the differences and get hype about it. And yes, you guys can probably see it in my glasses because if you follow me on Instagram, if you go look at my Instagram story right now, it's the meme. I did the meme. Can you guys watch? Because I did the meme. Thanks. All right. Anyways, let's get into this Switch 2 first look trailer. Courtesy of Nintendo of America. So the first thing I'll say is anyone in the comment section of this video asking if it's April 2nd or February 4th is an idiot. This was posted by Nintendo of America. Nintendo of America. They don't do it backwards. We live in the right country. Anyways. It's going to be kind of loud, but that's okay. I'd rather it be louder than me. There's the original Switch in all of its not so glorious glory. Slide off. Whoa, that's big. It sheds its skin. I want to talk about something I already just noticed. And like, of course, that was like one of the things I thought about as well when I first saw it. It looks very different. It looks interesting. Look how far back that goes. You can really blow your Nintendo Switch 2's back out. That's crazy. Joy-Cons look a lot bigger. Good. SL and SR are like real buttons now. Smiley face. Took hints out of the Legion Goes book. Just saying. Still has the Nintendo layout, of course. I don't think Nintendo will ever swap their layout. And then there's the mouse mode everyone was assuming we were gonna get. Magnet. Nice. That's what I hear whenever I think of it. That's sick. Okay, we'll watch like the full thing and then we'll go back and analyze that. Because of course, I have like Analyze Brain on and I've been looking at so many gaming handhelds and stuff, so a lot of this is interesting to me. Also, I want to pause it. I goofed. I said we were gonna watch the whole thing without pausing, but I lied. This isn't Mario Kart. This is not Mario Kart 8. Okay, unless this is a mock-up Mario Kart just for like a tech demo, which they could have done. That Donkey Kong looks like the movie Donkey Kong, and Bowser looks different. This is not Mario Kart 8. And this track does not look like a Mario Kart 8 track. And Mario Kart 8's been out like fucking 12 years, so I think I know what all the tracks look like by now. And there's the dock. They don't show, okay, there's the control. They don't show the peripherals on the dock. We know the release date is this year. That's sick. I wish they'd gave us a quarter at least. Plays Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games as well as Nintendo Switch games. Nintendo Switch 2 plays both physical and digital Nintendo Switch games. Certain Nintendo Switch games may not be supported on or fully supported / compatible with the Nintendo Switch 2. Details will be shared on the Nintendo website at a later date. That's sick. So the reason why I think this is really cool is because that's the same thing they did with the Nintendo 3DS. The Nintendo 3DS had its own cartridges that were slightly different that would only fit in a Nintendo 3DS, but it could also play DS cartridges, like original DS cartridges. I love the Nintendo 3DS. I think it was a really good console. Like backwards compatibility for the handhelds, I think is pretty important, at least for 2 generations, right? We had the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. Or I'm sorry, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, all backwards compatible with each other. Like the Game Boy Advance could play both original Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games. That was sick, right? The Game Boy Color could play Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games. Then we got to the DS, which could play Game Boy Advance games. I don't think it could play Game Boy Color or Game Boy games, but it could play Game Boy Advance games and it could play Nintendo DS games, right? And then when the 3DS came out, they got rid of the Game Boy Advance slot. Unfortunate, but at least it had one generation of console backwards compatibility. So Nintendo is is hopefully not being a shithead and probably only making games that require whatever motion sensors or AR stuff that the original Switch has that maybe Switch 2 doesn't support. Not compatible. Like something like I think of things like Nintendo Labo, right? And maybe Amiibos. And for like IR stuff, maybe like Switch Sports, if that requires that you have motion controls. Because in the mockups they didn't mention anything about motion controls, which would be a little sad because that's like Nintendo's thing. Nintendo's had motion controls since the Wii in some way, shape, or form on their home consoles, but this is a handheld home console hybrid since the Switch. I mean, sorry, since the Wii, right? So that'd be a crazy change after almost 15 years. But what I'm thinking is that things like Nintendo Labo won't be working, and the Amiibos, and if we don't get motion control, something like the Just Dance series or Switch Sports, if that uses a 1-2 switch, things like that won't be working with the Switch 2. That's all speculation, conjecture. It says here like details will be shared on the Nintendo website at a later date. So I like the redesign. I like how it's still got a chunky bezel just like the original Nintendo Switch, but it's bigger, which I think is good. It also looked fatter, right? It looked a little thicker, a little chunkier, which is good for the hands because like a flat handheld really sucks when you're a grown man or a grown woman, I guess, and you have like larger hands. But I'm sure the original Nintendo Switch and the Switch Lite are perfectly sized for like a teenager or like a kid's hands. They make it the original Nintendo Switch where there's like a gap in between the screen and the Joy-Cons, if you guys see that there. And that doesn't exist on the Switch 2. I think that's really cool. I think that's super tight. So let's go back and watch and do some analyzing on things that are extremely different. Because I already saw something that was very interesting. And this Nintendo Switch 2 Direct is April 2nd, 2025. Not April 1st. It's not April Fool's Day joke. Don't worry, chat. I wish Nintendo Shadow dropped it as like an April Fool's joke. Like if they did it April 1st and then April 2nd, they were like, yeah, it wasn't an April Fool's joke, guys. Anyways, here's the Direct. That'd have been so much better. All right, so let's go back to the very beginning. And look at some leaks too, the leak specs that are probably true at this point, with how much the leaked, like the mock-up leaks were clearly very close to being right. There's the original Nintendo Switch in all of its glory. And you look at it here and it gets significantly bigger, right? So I think it's going from a 7-inch display to a 8-inch display. So slightly under the display size of the Legion Go. Of course, it's going to be smaller than the Legion Go because the Legion Go is 8.8 inches and very bulky, very chunky indeed. But this is definitely thicker than the original Nintendo Switch and it's a bigger tablet. That's good. Which means that, let's be real, more room for a bigger battery if possible and better cooling, right? And if you have better cooling and a bigger battery, that means you can push more wattage into the parts to get better performance. Just a thought, just throwing it out there. The vents at the top also look a lot bigger when they do the shedding part right here. Look at the vents. Watch this. Watch this. So there's one of the snaps for the magnetic Joy-Cons. Joy-Con 2s will only work with that. That kind of sucks though, unless they're gonna make it so that you can just put your Joy-Cons together on one of the controller attachments, on one of the OG controller attachments, and use it as a third or fourth controller. It's kind of sad to see that the original Joy-Cons, because the device got bigger, aren't going to be compatible, right? But you had to when you think of all the things that you're doing to change the way the rail system works. There's no longer a rail system, now it's magnetic, which I think was like a Pimax Portal thing first, but it seems to be a good idea because the Pimax Portal did it and there was no issues with it. Generically, I mean, the Pimax Portal has its own issues, and the Switch 2 is going to be adopting it. Good. So this thing at the bottom, is this the top or the bottom? That's the top. This is the top. This is the bottom. So this USB-C looks kind of big. This looks like it's not a USB-C port. That's just a thought. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that looks too wide to be a traditional USB-C. This might be for high bandwidth transfer for when you dock it. Now to use that bottom one for docked play, and then the top one's like for regular on-the-go charging, so that you get higher performance while docked, better than you could with the Switch 1. And you probably need to, knowing the parts that are in it are going to be more high-powered, maybe, going to require that extra bandwidth. That's what I'm assuming this is, because that does not look like a standard USB-C port. It doesn't. It's slightly thicker, and it's got prongs on the inside, where there's no prongs on the inside of a standard USB-C port, which I have one right here. Like if I were to pull the case off my phone, There's a USB-C port in there, and there's no prongs in there. It's just the one center one, but as you see, there's 4 at the bottom, or I guess 2 sets at the bottom, 2 sets probably at the top as well. Downfiring speakers, I think those are downfiring speakers. All the ventilation, cooling, here's the USB-C. Traditional port, headphone jack, game card slot. I didn't see a SIM card slot. I'm sorry, a micro SD card slot. Yeah, power button, volume buttons. Yeah, I don't see a... I didn't see an SD card slot. That's one thing that seems to be missing on this mock-up, at least, right? And then they have the swiveling U-shaped kickstand. The kickstand on the original Nintendo Switch was shit. It was really bad. But the Switch OLED had a really good kickstand. It was way wider. It was phenomenal. It was almost as good as the Legion Ghost kickstand, right? It didn't have to support as much weight, so it didn't have to be as strong as the Legion Ghost, but the Legion Ghost is really good. This one, it looks closer to something that's on the Acer Nitro 11, right? And it's not going to be as big as the Acer Nitro 11, but maybe this thing's not going to be as heavy, so it won't matter too much. And there's even little skid stops right there. You see that skid stop over there? That's so that when you place it down on the table and you put out the kickstand, it doesn't slide, because who knows what kind of plastic this is. It's probably really soft plastic, like it was on the original Nintendo Switch, where it's kind of it's not a coarse material, right? I made this joke already, but you can really blow the back out of your Nintendo Switch too. That's crazy. I still don't see a micro SD card slot. That's strange. And now they show the Joy-Cons, right? They get bigger. I like that. Let's go back to the comparison, where you can see the size difference between the Joy-Con 2 and 1. Okay, so they just flipped it, boom, showed the new Joy-Con with the home button on it, and then it gets bigger. Because of that, the buttons look huge, but I'm sure they're about the same size, if only narrowly bigger. And I have a bone to pick with Nintendo. Can we get concave joysticks, please? Can we just... I haven't used my controller while I was cat on it. Can we get concave joysticks, please? Please? Can we stop getting this weird ridged shit on the top and on the sides? I hate that. Can we just make it concave, dude? Yeah, those are definitely significantly bigger. They also look more rounded instead of straight flat, which I think is a great idea. Then they fill in for player 1, player 2 with either the orange or the blue. Nice. Same thing here, the orange and the blue. SL and SR now stick out of the shell a little bit here, which I think is pretty good. That rail system, even though it's magnetic, that rail system still kind of scares me, because any exposed rail like that freaks me the hell out. I have a Legion Go, and I think the same thing about mine. I want to get a control attachment so when I detach them, I can cover up all of the electronics that are just hanging out, exposed to the elements. It's not like I play outside that much. I played outside. I played while walking home today. I was playing Brotato on my walk home, but I didn't have it detached, of course, because I needed to use it as a handheld. I can't have the tablet. And anyways, I digress. You understand what I'm saying. I don't really like how these pins are just straight exposed. It kind of sucks, but at least there's a full suite of buttons here. It actually looks like there's 4. I don't know if those 2 buttons right there are just for release mechanisms, right? I'm assuming that top one is the release mechanism that lets you pull it off. So that would mean that you have SL, SR as your ZLZR. Cool. That guy's player 1, and this is your player 2. Let's get it. Yeah, and you see here, oh no, they're both denoted as player 1. Bad trailer. One should have been denoted as 1. One should have been denoted as 2. But I guess it's because they're still together. You're just detaching them and using them as Joy-Cons separately, the same way the Dancing Little Mac Shoutouts to Arliss does. Like, once again, same design. I really like it. I wish they would have at least got rid of the split face buttons and gone for a more traditional D-pad. But once again, the Joy-Con layout, like, I can kind of understand, because the Pimax Portal does the same thing and everyone fucking hates it. But man, I wish these buttons were, instead of buttons, just a D-pad, right? I don't know, maybe you add an attachment to it to make it feel more like a traditional D-pad, but it won't have that pivot is the biggest problem. So I'm not sure what they could have done here to keep the Switch spirit alive, but kind of make the D-pad more single-player centric, right? Like, you're not using it as 2 different devices, Joy-Con 1 and Joy-Con 2 in a multiplayer game that's simple. You're using it like detached on a controller attachment. Now you have to deal with like weird, like say you want to do quarter circles. This is a first world problem. This is a fighting game player problem. It doesn't really matter anywhere else for a D-pad. Maybe I guess also precision platformers like Celeste or like Super Meat Boy, right? Precision platformers, you probably want to go D-pad, and this has never been it. That's one of like the biggest cruxes of the Nintendo Switch is that it's D-pad with shit. Stella's smiley face. There's the buttons, and they pop out more. Whoa, did you see that? Okay, I think that's the release mechanism. You see this right here? I think this is the release mechanism that triggers those two buttons, the one on the top and the bottom, for you to be able to pull it off because they're magnetically snap in, but then those connectors hit, right? And then I think once those connectors hit, that button must release some sort of pressure from the magnet, or maybe I'm not sure how it works. Get rid of some sort of signal. So the magnets turn off for a split second. You can pull them apart because real strong magnets, it's hard to really get them off. That was like one of the things about the Pimax Portal is once you get those controllers on, it's super hard to get them off unless you go this way. Like you kind of have to bend them a little bit, and it's kind of creaky, a little ghetto feeling. I hate it. I hate it more than I hate that my Legion Go already has some wobble on my left. True Strike control Joy-Con. I'm a fucking Joy-Con, and that's because I take off my left one as much as the right one, but the right one has no issues. The left one is already feeling a little creaky, and I don't want that to be a problem with the Nintendo Switch 2. That's something that could happen with the original Nintendo Switch 1, by the way. Now this feature. Oh wait, no, they show full rotation because the problem with the original Nintendo Switch. Okay, the biggest problem is that they get Joy-Con drift, but they weren't real circles. If you ever like did it, you would get almost like a weird square snapping pattern. You would get like all of the eights. Like it was almost like octagonal. It was really weird. But this looks like it's going to be a full rotation circle. Unfortunately, they still went for these like low profile joystick things, which is super irrelevant because this device is big. It's not really fitting in your pocket anyway. You could have gone for fuller joysticks, right? Something along the lines of what's on the AYN Odin devices or Loki devices. The Lenovo Legion Go, which doesn't have like full size. Those don't have full size console joysticks, but they're very close. They're significantly closer to real console controller joysticks than the Nintendo Switch 1 or 2 is. And that's really unfortunate. One of the things that a lot of companies end up doing is making better Joy-Cons with better controls and ergonomics because Nintendo fucking sucks at it. And I hate that. I would really love like good ergonomic Joy-Cons right out of the gate so you don't have to buy third-party ones from Hori or Cracked. I'm trying to think of another company. Hori or Cracked. This is really the only one I'm thinking of, maybe Power A. So I love Hori, by the way. And Cracked made the Nitro Deck, which I think is sick. And I hope we get a Nitro Deck 3 for the Switch 2. That'd be dope. The Nitro Deck would look so good on this. I'll show you guys the Nitro Deck in a second. Now this. Hold on. Now this feature. Look at this shit. It snaps into this, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know what Nintendo's got cooking, but people said something about maybe it having an optical mouse sensor on one of the Joy-Cons, kind of like the Legion Go has a trackpad. The Steam Deck has 2 trackpads, right? So all of the devices that are worth a fuck have one. Sorry, ROG Ally. Sorry, MSI Claw. They're good devices. I just like to poke fun at them for being PCs without any way to navigate, without having to use your little joystick, which doesn't feel great on Windows. Now, this isn't going to be a Windows device. It's going to be an Android device, of course, because that's what the last Nintendo Switch was. It was some sort of an Android fork, which is, I guess, Linux, when you really think about it. So it looks like there's going to be some sort of a mouse attachment. You slide this into it, and now, as you see here, it's sliding around on the desk like a mouse. I like that they did this also, so that you would think about it, like, oh, it's got the little tail, and it's running around. It's a mouse, or it's a rat. But this is probably supposed to be a mouse. I don't think they make gaming rats. They make gaming mice. That's very neat. And then re-snaps back on. I like this. So it sucks that the colorway is stuck inside of there, because if you have like specialty Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons that may come out eventually, you'll always have blue and orange on the inside unless you get a special edition Switch that maybe has different colors, like a Legend of Zelda theme would have like green and gold, or Mario would have red and green, Mario and Luigi, I guess, right? A Donkey Kong would have like red and yellow for the colors on DK's tie. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. A Fortnite one. Let's go with Fortnite. If you don't, you're going to be stuck with this colorway on the inside. And that sucks for like color snobs, but that's really good for knowing which one is player 1 and which one is player 2 all the time without having to think about it. Because you know blue goes with blue and orange goes with orange. It takes like 2 brain cells to figure that out. So if you have less than 2, don't buy this device. Just a thought. Very neat. I like the snap. People in the marketing were like, why is 2 at the top above Nintendo Switch at the bottom? So 2's at the top because this emblem over here means Nintendo Switch. So this is the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Switch. So the Nintendo Switch is switching to the Nintendo Switch. Bars? Hell yeah. I'm gonna look at the dock again. So they don't show it very well. Okay, also we see some of the characters. I don't want to speculate too much on Mario Kart 9, so we're not doing this. It's irrelevant to me. If we get a new Mario Kart, thank God. We've had Mario Kart 8 for a friggin' decade, right? So it goes into the dock. Screen turns off. It goes to the TV. We see nothing on the dock. It snaps into the controller attachment. Looks better, but like we still got a problem. It's like not angled. Like it should probably be angled, right? Because now you have your buttons and your D-pad and your buttons same plane instead of inset. You see how here you have your ABXY buttons in the right layout, and then you move inwards to get the analog stick. Same here. You have the analog stick, and then you move inwards to get the D-pad. That's not how the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's not how the original Nintendo Switch 1 one was either. And once it's so simple to just make this kind of curve inwards like that. That's all they had to do, was just make this slightly curve inwards or outwards, right? Inwards or outwards, and it would have been fine. They didn't really think to do that, so now it's a little unergonomic again. We're still in this like Nintendo doesn't know what ergonomics are. Japanese people must have the most flexible hands I've ever fucking seen. That's sick. That's sick. I'm super excited. I'm hype as hell. I kind of want to look at some leaks of specs, which I think is very important, because I think specs, until we get like full ones, we'll just kind of spitball with the idea of what they've given us. And I think the idea of what they've given us is, oops, I almost hit print screen. Oh, you have to hit Windows print screen for it to actually print anything there, right? So it's fine. Or screenshot anything. Okay, so yeah, the full specs leaked. Yeah, it was posted January 16th, which is today. And the reason why they posted it today is because, you know, we've already had the spec leaks, but they're reposting it because now there's the official render of it, right? We know the hardware, now we just need to know the software and the specs. Now, potentially we know the specs. We know that we're looking at an ARM CPU, an ARM Cortex A78C, apparently, with 8 cores. We don't know the L1, L2, and L3 cache sizes. We know the GPU is an NVIDIA Tegra GPU. We don't know which one. And an Ampere one, which means that it's based on the 30 series architecture. To go back, I believe the RTX Ampere series is 4 years old now. RTX 3090 release date. To go back, it's 5 years old now. Holy crap, they began shipping in 2020. So that's 4 years ago, almost 5. So we're looking at 5-year-old hardware. And probably the closest thing we're going to get to this in GPU compute is something like the RTX 2050 mobile. Right, there's 2 versions of the RTX 2050. The mobile version just means that it doesn't use 75 watts, it uses 45. They're both in laptops, so I don't know what one's called mobile on the website, but the mobile version is 30 watts max. And its boost clock and memory clock are still too high. Its base clock is really similar, though. Let me see if I can get that back. So if we look here, we're looking at a GPU frequency. No, it's still too high. Look at the GPU frequency here. It's 561 megahertz. This is 735 megahertz. Definitely too high. The memory frequency, the memory bandwidth is 68 gigabytes. The memory bandwidth here is 112 gigabytes, so double. But it gets to share the full memory size with the CPU and GPU, which I guess is kind of cool. It means if you have low-end CPU requirements for the amount of RAM, you can end up with more RAM than the 2050 mobile app. The 2050 mobile app max can only have 4 gigs of VRAM. This could have up to like 5.1, maybe 5 point, maybe a full 5 if you are looking at the operating system using 1 gigabyte of RAM. Right? Wait, I'm lying. It's way more than that. I'm tripping. Let's keep looking at the specs because I'm dumb. So we're looking at 1 graphics processing cluster, 12 streaming multiprocessors, which is simultaneous multi-threading basically. 1,532 CUDA cores. Let's look at the CUDA cores on this. Yeah. Okay. So about 25% more cores. About 25% more cores. Okay. 6 extra processing clusters. 48 Gen 3 tensor cores. I don't know how many tensor cores this has. TMUs is not tensor cores. And it is using 2 ray tracing cores. Also doesn't show how many ray tracing cores this has, I don't think. Let me see. RT cores 32. So way more. Holy shit. And there's the tensor cores. So SM 16. So another 4. TMUs. Do we have TMUs here? We do not have TMUs here. I guess it's something that doesn't matter. But we do have the tensor cores. Tensor cores 48 compared to 64. Yeah. Okay. We don't know the L1, L2, and L3 cache. This has a teraflop compute, a theoretical performance of 5 teraflops. This is the teraflop wars are over. Let's be real. But this is only 1.7 teraflops. I think the Steam Deck is really close to that. The Steam Deck is like 2.4 or something. Steam Deck teraflops. I hate using teraflops because like it doesn't really matter. But like, let's use it. How many teraflops does the Steam Deck has? The Steam Deck apparently has 1.6 teraflops. Okay, I was wrong. I was thinking of a different handheld altogether. I must have been thinking of like a 780, a 760M based CPU cluster. My bad. Sorry. So it's technically stronger than a Steam Deck on paper, right? But it's using less RAM, as you see here. It only has 12 gigs of LPDDR5 instead of having 16 gigs. But say 2 to 3 of that goes towards the operating system and CPU overhead for the game. That means you can end up with 8 gigs of RAM. If maximum 4 goes towards that, you have 8 gigs of VRAM. That's way better than any 2050 will ever have. So the 2050 is often bottlenecked by its own memory bus or memory bus and bandwidth, and its amount of VRAM at 4 gigabytes. It's using GDDR6 instead of LPDDR5X, but we don't have. I don't think we have LPDDR6 yet for SoCs, for system on chips. CPU 900, not even a full gigahertz. Once again, not a full gigahertz, half of a gigahertz. The memory frequency is pretty close, actually. Memory frequency. Where the hell is the memory frequency here? I assume it's pretty close. I don't see it. I'm stupid. This is the memory clock. So I don't think that's it. Also, I think this is just the... Oh, you know what? This is the memory frequency of the LPDDR5X. This is for all the memory, of course. Duh, I'm stupid. So DDR5, I think this is very close to low-end DDR5. I think DDR5 like 4,000 is the lowest, so we're like barely above DDR5 baseline. But that's probably to keep the clocks down, to keep the power down, so that it doesn't blow up in your hands, right? You don't want that. And this is all in handheld mode, by the way. And then the memory bandwidth is 64 gigabytes per second. Cool. Docked mode, we're looking at 1,008 megahertz, 1,007.25 megahertz. That's cool. That's 3.0 teraflops. That's almost double. Almost double the power. I think if we look at the GPU that's the equivalent to the PS4, it would be like what? The Radeon 7850? Radeon... AMD 7850. 7850. Jesus. I can't type. If we're using teraflops as a unit of measurement, Then here we are. Maybe it's 7870. It's either 7850 or 7870. So it's in handheld mode. It's very close to a base PS4, which is cool, right? And then people said that it was something closer to like an RX 580. Where would that be? RX 580 or RX 570 for the PS4 Pro? 5 teraflops. Still too low for that. But in between a base PS5 and a PS5 Pro, I'm sorry, PS4 and PS4 Pro for something like the docked version, which is like pretty serviceable, right? It's a little scary, but you have to think of all the NVIDIA magic that's going into this because, of course, ray tracing cores and Ampere architectures means there's going to be some form of Nintendo upscaling that's probably based off of or using DLSS, which is really, really cool. The memory bandwidth also goes up almost by double. And here's the official render. Here is what we're looking at here. The Nintendo Switch was using 4 gigs of RAM. It had LPDDR4. I see my old GPU right above the 7850. Nice. It had 25 gigabits of... How did we use this for so long? How did we use this for so long? Holy macaroni. That's scary. CUDA cores. Yeah, I mean, the Switch 2, if there was a Switch Pro in the works like 3 years ago and everyone was talking about it, this is a beefed up Switch Pro. This isn't just a Switch Pro. This is a Switch Pro on crack. Because these are huge, like massive gains. Like 8 times almost the amount of CUDA cores, double the memory bandwidth or the bus width, 3x the memory size, moving over to LPDDR5X. The SM count is 12 over 2, 4 times, almost 5 times the memory bandwidth, and a bigger chassis, of course. That's awesome. I'm glad to see that. Now, I think the bigger chassis is a little sad for those who like something like the original Nintendo Switch Lite, because the Nintendo Switch Lite, in comparison to the Switch, was doable because the Switch was so anemic. Like, it was such a, I don't want to say bad, but it was such an underpowered device. It wasn't very big on performance. And because it wasn't trying to be big on performance, can I please find images? There we go. Because it wasn't trying to be big on performance, you didn't need a giant device. You could really scale it down and it would work just fine. I don't know how well they're going to, and like keep the same performance, right? At least in handheld mode. I don't know how well they're going to be able to do something like that with the Switch 2 to a potential Switch 2 Lite. I don't know how well that's going to work out. Look how much smaller it is. And we might not get something like this. Right? The Switch and the Switch OLED about the same size. The Switch OLED just has smaller bezels. And then boom, there's the Switch Lite. Now, I did hear one thing about the Nintendo Switch 2 that is kind of sad, but makes sense. It seems like they're moving back to an LCD screen. But that's probably just to keep the price down and keep it like cheap and cheerful so it's in the hands of more people at a time. Once again, I'm not upset about any of this that much, but it is a little weird to see like them be regressive when it comes to the base features of what was the last known iteration of the Nintendo Switch. But it's getting so many more things over that, so it's very cool to see this finally coming to, you know, the forefront, not as a leak. Nintendo probably didn't want to put this out yet, but we kind of forced their hand. Everyone kept leaking it. Thanks, everyone. So now we got it a little earlier than normal. I also think, my humble opinion, that it had nothing to do with the leaks. It had everything to do with people. It had everything to do with people probably speculating that the Nintendo Direct, that's supposed to be in February, was going to show the Switch 2 in some capacity. And they probably wanted to just get out ahead of that, get out ahead of all the bad PR, all the bad press, all the annoying Nintendo fans and Nintendrones that would have been mad if we just got Nintendo Switch 1 games, when we all know the Switch 2 is around the corner, in February with no news of the Switch 2. Now we know that Switch 2 is coming out. It will be backwards compatible. Don't worry. The Switch 1 library, all the Switch 1 games that are coming out still will be playable on the Nintendo Switch 2. And we'll show you the Switch 2 now. Wait a couple months, and boom, here you go. You'll be able to see it. That kind of tracks or lines up with them potentially having a fall or late spring, probably fall release, right? So that there's tons out there on the market ready for the holiday season of 2025, the boom of people getting money or ready to spend money, Black Friday, all of those things. I'm hoping in April 2nd that we get full technical specifications. Nintendo doesn't usually do that, but it'd be really cool to see them kind of get on the same page with Sony and and Microsoft and show off their full specifications, even though they're not the power war. That's not what they've ever been. But it'd be really nice to know what device you're buying and what you're paying for and how strong it is natively, right? Before all of the upscaling. Show us the software. Show us the features that are being used. Show us all of the cool new types of interesting device things. Talk about the things that are missing from the Switch 1 so people know what kind of games they won't be able to play anymore. And give us more information on the dock, why that bottom port looks a little bit smaller, and maybe the upscaling of how all of that's going to work when it moves over to the TV. Hopefully we also get a few games announced as well so that we know a couple of the launch lineup games and maybe even a release date on that first day so that people can start knowing exactly how much they need to save, how much they need to have ready. Just put a rack away, bro. Start putting a rack away right now. I don't think it's going to cost a rack. In my opinion, I'm almost certain that something like the Nintendo Switch 2, which I guess we can put back up on screen so you guys can see it. So you guys aren't just looking at my ugly mug as I'm talking about this stuff. I'm assuming that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to cost something like $450, $500, right? Something like the base PS5 now or the Xbox Series X. That's what I'm assuming this is going to cost because it's going to have last generation performance in a handheld, probably, and then be maybe Xbox Series S level docked or slightly under Xbox Series S level docked, which I think is fine enough, especially when you think about the fact that this is a hybrid console. People already pay way more for this same kind of performance and, well, maybe not the same kind of performance, but similar performance and versatility when you think of the Legion Go, the ROG Ally X, the MSI Claw AI 8 Plus. Why is that such a fucking long name? And I also think I said it wrong. The Steam Deck, right, which would be price parity with the Nintendo Switch 2 if they launch it at something like $500 or $450. It would be right in between those two SKUs of the LCD and the first OLED at $550. So we'll see what Nintendo does come April 2nd. I almost said February 4th. Look at me thinking that we're going to get information sooner than we will. And I'm hoping everyone's excited for this device. This is hype.